farmers. Her father had been proud of his clever daughter and had had her educated at the local school. She had obtained a post as governess to the English Marquis of Devizes and had travelled south to make her fortune. But after having worked for 40 years in various titled households, she had found herself too old to find another post in the fickle south, and so she had returned to her native land. The laird had offered her room and board, provided she acted as companion and governess to his daughter Morag, and she had gratefully accepted, her father being now dead and her brother who had inherited the farm having a shrew of a wife. None the less, spinster though she was, she had often overheard strange and disturbing conversations in her sojourn in England, so she tried her best. "There are some things, Miss Grant," said the governess, turning an interesting shade of mottled purple, "that a young girl should know about her wedding night." "Oh," said Morag, trying to give the governess her full attention while coping with novel feelings of excitement and anticipation. She had never been away from home before. Now she would have a house of her own, and a castle at that. "Yes," went on Miss Simpson, faint but pursuing, "you will share a bed with your lord, and he will do things to you that are necessary to beget a child." Now Miss Simpson had Morag's full blue-eyed attention. "What things?" "Things that a young lady does not discuss or even think about," said Miss Simpson, breathing hard. "You must simply endure whatever happens, close your eyes tightly, and think of the king." Miss Simpson avoided Morag's eyes, staring at some point over the girl's shoulder. Morag did not know that Miss Simpson had heard several unsavoury stories about the Earl, that, although he had been married before, he had no legitimate heir, only a string of bastards, and that he could only take his pleasures with the lowest of the serving wenches, but that a high-bred lady froze his balls, an expression which Miss Simpson did not understand, thinking it referred to some heraldic term or something like the ball and sceptre. But deep in her heart, Miss Simpson envied Morag, who was ever happily married anyway. A husband meant a secure future for a woman. Morag would never know what it meant to be passed from household to household. "Age," said Miss Simpson grimly, tucking a stray strand of grey hair under her starched cap, "must always be honoured. Remember what I have said." But Morag merely stroked the satin sheen of her wedding gown and thought of her fine trousseau and forgot, for the moment, everything the governess had said. Her lord, the Earl of Murr, indeed looked old when she first saw him, which was in front of the altar, although he seemed like a resplendent figure of a man with his great chest, slim hips, and good legs with fine calves. His eyes, which were as blue as Morag's own, were slightly bulbous, and his mouth was loose and wet, but he had a fine head of nut-brown hair. Morag had trained herself to enjoy the best of each minute, no matter what the circumstances. It was her way of combating the loneliness of her solitary life. So she simply enjoyed the feel of the new clothes against her body, the fine dresses of the wedding guests, and the fact that her father, who hardly ever seemed to notice her, was actually shedding sentimental tears. The journey from her home among the grim mountains of the Highlands was too uncomfortable and fatiguing to allow for any dalliance, so no attempt at consummating the marriage took place until the night of their arrival at Castle Murr. The wedding night was very strange. It was embarrassing to sit propped against the pillows watching her husband being undressed by his valet. First, the nut-brown hair turned out to be a wig, which, once removed, disclosed a nearly bald pate. Then, when my lord's corsets were unlaced, his chest fell to somewhere about his knees, and furthermore, his fine calves were made of wood and came off with his stockings. He seemed to be looking forward to his wedding night, for he leaped on the bed with a triumphant cry and got to work immediately, while Morag lay back, the hem of her nightgown nearly strangling her, and thought of the king. In her mind, nakedness and humiliation seemed destined to go hand in hand. Her thrashings from her father had